would I take the deal of paying 12% now, or would I take the deal of paying 15% or 18% or whatever the case may be? But just looking at it through that lens of what subsidies am I giving up and what would that effective tax rate be?
Welcome to another Wise Money Spotlight, our monthly deep dive into a financial planning concept, working with one of the certified financial planners on the KFG team. My name is Mike Bernard. I am your host. I am one of the CFPs at Korhorn Financial Group. But with me in the KFG studio for the first time, CFP Tanner Watson. Tanner is a graduate of Taylor University, where he played baseball, which I'm super jealous of. He's a catcher. Maybe we can ask him a question about that in just a bit. But he's been on the KFG team for several years now, serves a lot of clients, and specializes in all 6 areas, but certainly with helping people make the biggest financial decision in their life, and that's retirement planning. So, Tanner, welcome into the studio.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Tanner and I work, like our offices are kitty corner from each other. And he likes to play this game where he comes in and stumps me and asks me a sincere question that he's already thought through. And I don't know the answer. So do you get some kicks off of doing that?
Not necessarily. It does make me feel a little better sometimes when you don't know the answer, because then I know that I'm not missing something obvious.
We're going to get into a real life scenario and question here, and I don't think either of us are going to be stumped, but it's all to help you navigate your own retirement. Whether you're finding yourself in the same scenario, retiring before Medicare, or that's a goal of yours, we're gonna get through it. But before we do, Tanner, hot take question: what would you say the secret is to being able to retire early? If you were to ask anyone, hey, when do you want to retire? The most common answer is yesterday, right? I feel that way sometimes. What's the secret to being able to retire early?
Yeah. Well, the good news is it's not a secret. I guess what I would tell somebody is some of that depends on your stage of life. I think for somebody who's starting out with a long runway, it's save early and save often. And that's the one that's no secret. For somebody who's maybe a few years away, the best piece of advice I could give is you have to know what you're going to spend. If you're going to create a plan to retire, there's really no great way to do that if you don't know what you're going to spend. You might know what forms of income you're going to have. For most people, that's going to be Social Security. You're going to have your investments, maybe a pension. But if you don't know what you're going to spend, we're really just guessing as to how much you need to pull from your retirement accounts.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm on a soapbox, and nothing here in Wise Money is scripted, but that is it. That's a fantastic segue into what we're going to get into, because one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're planning for retirement is they might use an off-the-shelf calculator or some sort of rough analysis to see, well, can I retire? And that spending number that Tanner said is so important, and I completely agree. There's 5 factors that you need to analyze. They're all interrelated to determine whether you're on track for retirement. Spending's the second one. But in most budgeting softwares or tools, they just overlook it, and they just either use a rounding error or it's not very in-depth. And I think people might gravitate towards that because, that seems easy and I'm sure it's fine. When you're saying this is one of the secrets, like this is one of the most important variables out there. So what you might not realize is health insurance and your health insurance expense needs to be broken out as one of those line items in your retirement plan as an expense, right? And have you ever encountered a new client that's come in where that has been something that they've already sort of laid out as part of their spending? I know we coach people through that in all of our plans that we build, but I haven't ever had anyone come in where they already had that as a line item.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I can think of 2 clients off the top of my head who came in with some type of insurance offered through their work even after they retired. So for those clients, it was already top of mind. They knew exactly what the monthly cost was going to be. They knew what their out-of-pocket max was going to be. And so in those cases, yes, they did. Most people, probably not.
Yeah. And it needs to be a line item. And one of the reasons for that is it's going to be one of the largest expenses you face in retirement. The other reason is it's been inflating. It's been growing at a rate almost double the normal rate of inflation. So if you just have it tucked into your normal spending, it's going to be inflated at the wrong number. And odds are you're underestimating how much money you're going to spend on health insurance. So we're all making our way to a question from a fan of the show, Matt, who asked about, hey, I'm retiring at age 60. My wife's even younger than that. How do we figure out health insurance? I'm going to get to it in just a second, but retiring early requires a bridge to both Social Security, your income. But for this question, it requires a bridge to Medicare. Explain, Tanner, why that bridge is needed, right, when you're eligible for Medicare, and what the typical bridges are.
Yeah. Well, that bridge is needed because Medicare doesn't kick in until 65. And so for anybody who's retiring before 65, we just have to have a plan and to know what insurance they're going to have until they get there. And so one option that people have is COBRA, which is just really an extension of your workplace plan. For most folks, that's 18 months. And oftentimes that's pretty good insurance. The only downside is that one is usually pretty expensive as well. No longer is your employer help footing the bill for some of those premiums. It's all on you now. And so that often is an expensive option, but generally pretty good coverage. Another option would be healthcare.gov or marketplace insurance. Varies a little bit by state. That one is oftentimes the coverage is really up to you. You can pick a plan that covers a lot. You can pick a plan that covers very little. Obviously, that influences the premium. And the other thing that influences the premium you pay is your income. Yeah. And so if you're on the marketplace, it's really important in most cases to be able to monitor what income is going to be because there are some subsidies available. And
then the last one isn't really insurance at all, but it's still an option. And that's the share plans, right? And so these are oftentimes through a religious affiliation, so Christian share plan. There's a few others as well. It's not insurance, but it's some sort of coverage that where you pay a lower monthly amount, but if you have an expense, a medical expense, then you have to pay for that out of pocket and get reimbursed. I haven't seen someone go through that with a catastrophic medical event, but it would really test the limits of that system.
That would be my concern as well, is those are generally going to be, from a cost standpoint, pretty cost effective.
Yeah.
But a little higher risk if there were a catastrophic event.
Right. So from a coverage issue, there's some questions there. So all of that is leading to a question from fan of the show, Matt. Here's what he said. Long question, and there's a lot of depth to it, so that's why we had a little bit more banter than I would normally say. But newly retired, I'm age 60 years old. My wife's 54. And by far the biggest issue we're having is Roth conversions versus Affordable Care Act subsidies. I'm going to stop right there. So those are reductions in the premium that you would pay on a monthly basis for getting your health insurance through healthcare.gov, but it's going to be based on your income, what your modified adjusted gross income is, and therefore, like, if you do a lot of Roth conversions because you're young and it's early in retirement, that's going to push your income up, and you're not going to be eligible for these premium tax credits. So is there a balancing act? So anyway, here we go. We have about $2.7 million saved up in investments, but 1.6 of that is in IRAs, pre-tax IRAs. We're currently on COBRA, but that expires July of 2026. Perhaps doing some micro conversions will help us qualify for some subsidies until we reach age 65, and then we'll see where we're at. If one of us passes away early, that will certainly put us in a bind. I'd feel better if we could convert up to the top of the 12% tax bracket of a year, but with the health care premiums, they would increase, especially if depending on subsidies, what happens. So a lot of bobbing and weaving there is what we're expecting. But basically, what do you guys think? How would you plan for that? So before we get into that, I'd say first, Matt, excellent question and excellent situation. For those of you listening to that scenario saying, oh, I'd love those problems, it didn't happen by accident. And Matt could tell you. I don't know them, but I know the output requires a lot of planning, and that getting started early and wise financial decisions sacrifice. So yeah, fantastic.
That also demonstrates the need to look at all 6 areas of your financial life, because just that one topic that Matt brought up touched on taxes, and it touched on retirement, it touched on insurance planning, and all those things just play together.
Yeah.
So,
and that's our big take, right? There's 6 areas to your financial life. You got to look at all of them. They are more interconnected than you can think. So, okay, so that's the big question. Tanner, what do you think? How would you approach answering this question? Is Matt right? Just do little mini conversions, or do you don't convert at all and just enjoy these really cheap health care years, but you'll be paying for it with RMDs in the future? Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah. So the way that I generally think about this is I like to calculate the tax, or I like to calculate the subsidies that you would be giving up with the conversion and then just factor that in as part of the tax. So if a conversion means you're going to give up $500 a month in subsidies, okay, that translates to $6,000 for the year. Add that in to whatever the increase in tax is. And so if you were planning on the conversion being 12%, maybe that means your conversion is 15%, or maybe it means your conversion is at 18%, and then make the decision that way. I think the question is, would I take the deal of paying 12% now, or would I take the deal of paying 15% or 18% or whatever the case may be? But just looking at it through that lens of what subsidies am I giving up and what would that effective tax rate be?
What I love about that approach, and this is one of the, not where Tanner's tried to stump me, but he will come in with tax projections where it's written in and adding in that extra cost as a tax and saying, okay, well, here's the actual cost. Does it make sense? Let's talk through it. But here's what I love about it is when you could get a reduction in your health insurance premiums, this premium tax credit, and you give it up. I don't know why, but emotionally, it just feels like I shouldn't do that, right? Where you're saying, no, strip the emotions out of it. It's just an extra cost. Taxes are a cost, by the way. So just add that extra cost into the deal and look at it objectively. Because one of the things that Tanner didn't mention, he sort of glossed over it, is in order to make this decision objectively, unemotionally, you have to build out a tax projection. So Matt, I would build out a multi-year tax projection. Certainly the one for this year, or even, next year as well. But then also looking out into the future. If you build out that tax projection for this year, and Tanner, maybe you can, what does that page look like? We've got a column that shows last year.
Yeah.
We've got a column for this year if there's no Roth conversion.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a column that shows the conversion. And so the conversion would show, and maybe it's even a conversion at various levels. Maybe it's a conversion that fills up the 12% bracket. Maybe it's even a conversion where we look at paying tax at 22%. Obviously, that varies a whole lot by individual client. But for somebody with $1.6 million and growing, that's probably something to consider.
And only age 60 with spouse 54. That's where I thought you were going to say, having multiple columns. Well, here's what a column would look like if we converted up to the top of the 12% tax bracket. Here's what it would look like if we converted into the 22% tax bracket. And then underneath that tax analysis would reveal here's the actual tax cost and the effective tax rate. But then in pencil, because you write in pencil, I don't know why, underneath that, you would add in, hey, I'm giving up this sort of premium tax credit, or it would be added back in as an add back. And then you can actually compare apples to apples.
Exactly. Yeah. Adding in pencil or in pen. I've switched to pen.
Oh, okay.
Adding that in, you can do the math and determine, do we like that tax rate or do we not?
Because you could compare, what if instead of filling up the 12%, when you add in the premium tax credits that you'd be giving up, it's an effective rate of 16%. Well, I'd prefer 12. But if not doing the Roth conversion is going to mean out there in RMD world, we're going to be paying 22% tax, I'll pay 16 today to avoid 22.
Well, and then Matt even mentioned the hard part of the question about if one of you passes away early. And that's because if one of you were to pass away early, in the event that you don't do Roth conversions and that $1.6 million has grown a little bit, it's not out of the realm of possibility that you could be paying taxes in the 30s, whether that's 32% or 35% or 37%, filing as a single person.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it as well, is factoring that in.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to throw one more wild card at you here, Matt, and those of you in a similar situation. Matt, you mentioned you are age 60 years old, and I'm not sure when in the year you have your birthday, but the amount that when you do eventually get onto Medicare at age 65, the amount that you pay for Medicare is going to be based on what your modified adjusted gross income was the prior year. So basically the year you turn 63, that's the year that it's going to matter. Well, are you paying the normal rate, base rate for Medicare Part B and Part D, or do you have to pay a surcharge? You are age 60, just faced a very similar situation, very similar net worth, very similar amount of pre-tax dollars. We decided to just go for it. Hey, if the conversion is going to mean you're going to lose the premium tax credits, especially if that cliff stays into effect for next year, you're going to lose your premium tax credits. then let's go for it. Let's convert up to the top of the 22% tax bracket, because doing so, it's not going to cause an income-related monthly adjustment amount, or IRMA, a couple years from now, because it will burn off by the time you're age 63. We can shift a lot of this money to grow tax-free for the rest of your life when you're still young, and doing so before the IRMA threshold kicks in.
Absolutely. Makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Tanner, anything you would suggest differently if there was maybe more of this money was pre-tax? Would you have more urgency, or like, I guess, what additional take do you have?
Yeah, I would. If there was more money that was pre-tax, to me, that only increases the urgency to look at converting, or at least to consider it. Doesn't mean it's the right answer, but considering converting, because if you don't, Matt's 60, 10 years from now, it's not out of the question that money could double. And now all of a sudden we're looking at over $3 million that's pre-tax. And we just have a whole lot less wiggle room.
Yeah.
And so the more money that's pre-tax, I think it only increases the argument for Roth conversions.
Well, especially because RMDs would likely push you in a higher tax bracket that makes the risk even greater if you become suddenly single or something like that. And so, yeah, I'd have even more urgency. The point with all of this, guys, as you know, is to get proactive. Get proactive about your tax situation, about your retirement situation, your savings, and all of that, just as Matt did to land at retirement with this level of financial situation, right? Get proactive. Work with your certified financial planner, looking at all 6 areas of your financial life, and then do that geeky work. Your CFP, should be a geek and should love it. You can tell just by, hearing me and Tanner that, doing a tax projection, I love doing that work. And doing a multi-year tax projection, even stretching out into retirement, your CFP should love that. And will reality turn out that way? No. But will it give you information that will help inform decisions today? It absolutely will. So work with your certified financial planner on that. So work with your CFP on that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on our team. You can find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.